Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld a 30-year-old federal law preventing people accused of committing domestic abuse from possessing a firearm. This was a complete reversal of a district court ruling that had cited the prohibition as a violation of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court in its ruling observed that an individual who poses a credible threat to the physical safety of another individual must be disarmed temporarily, consistent with the Second Amendment. Chief Justice John Roberts rejected the case, which pertains to Texas man Zahi Rahimi, who was indicted in 2021 for knocking out his girlfriend when police recovered firearms and ammunition from his home. The case was a first involving domestic abusers that came before the top American court over gun rights. Earlier, the case went through the lower court, where conservatives held a 6-3 majority that favored loosening the gun restrictions. The ruling had left lower courts struggling to determine whether gun restrictions before them are consistent with the history and traditions of firearms. U.S. President Joe Biden hailed the Supreme Court decision in a statement, vowing to push for tougher gun restrictions to protect women. He said that ruling will help survivors of domestic violence, while their families will be able to count on critical protections. The ruling marks a major shift in firearm law, prompting numerous legal challenges to federal and state gun regulations. It also serves as directive for lower courts for dealing with gun regulations in the country that date back to late 18th to 19th century. Now, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York. Susan, good to have you. What is the latest you can tell us?
Well, as you mentioned, this was a ruling by the majority conservative Supreme Court that was somewhat against the Second Amendment rights of Americans, but it did have near unanimous support, 8-1. Justice Clarence Thomas, arguably the most conservative justice, said that this may be a threat to Second Amendment rights, but it seems that the other justices were very clear on this issue. As you mentioned, the federal court had tried to, a lower court had tried to struck down this based on Second Amendment laws and regulations, but the Supreme Court went back and said that, this has to stay. Really, it comes at a time when the issue of gun control and gun rights are center stage, even among some Americans who will be going to the polls in November as well. So this was very interesting.
All right, Susan, thank you so much for all those updates. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.